Hey everybody, how's it going out there? Well, a lot of you, the world right now is a bit under the weather. Whether you're talking about markets or people or countries or places and things, a lot of things are talking about one thing and one thing only. In fact, such a big world event that usually I don't talk about mainstream news all that much on this particular channel, but this is a big news event that is impacting a lot of people around the world. And yes, furries as a worldwide organization are certainly impacted by this particular phenomenon, which is called corona novel virus. And you know it's big because it's a novel. It's corona novel, not corona novella. It's a corona novel virus. So the history, for those of you not aware, have been living under a rock. If you're getting this news from me the first time, I am very appreciative. But you should probably get it elsewhere because I am not quick when it comes to the news. So you probably should look at other sources. Okay, but if you so it all started in Wuhan, China, and it's a virus that apparently it came from some sort of food district or some sort of market. The details about like exactly where it came from are kind of sketchy, as like some sort of seafood market or something like that. But basically, they consider that the kind of ground zero of the event. But basically, what we found since then is a virus that's able to transfer from person to person, and even worse, person to person before they show symptoms. And even worse, it's deadlier than the flu, but not as deadly, but on the positive, not as deadly as some other diseases that are very well infamous. It's no Spanish flu, it's no Black Death. It is, but it is an issue. It is a WAPA, as they would say. So a lot this obviously has a lot of individuals concerned. It is has approximately around a 2% mortality rate at this time. Numbers are like 2% to 3%, which is deadlier than the flu. It's not like Ebola, which is like 50%, 40 to 50%, right? So you like flip a coin. It's like you get Ebola, you flip a coin, and heads you die, tails you live, right? It's really that deadly. Um, or it's not like Ebola or Ebola. We already covered Ebola. SARS is like I can't remember the exact statistic. I think it was around 10%. But SARS didn't catch as much as this one is. This one's catchy. This one's really catchy. So before we get too into it, let's get into actual statistics, because actual statistics are the important foundation that you use to base your decisions off of. Because a lot of furries are going to have to make a lot of important decisions in the future coming months as this thing makes its way into the United States. It's quickly becoming a pandemic. There are growing cases in the United States at this point. There have been growing cases in some of the most impacted countries at this point that we are aware of are Italy and Iran. There are some in the Asian Pacific area. There's a lot of areas that are impacted there as well. Um, in fact, there is one area that actually decided to postpone events in the furry fandom. A furry convention in Bangkok. Yes, that Bangkok. One night in Bangkok. But if you're going to have the one night in Bangkok for this furry convention, they have decided to postpone it due to the Corona 19, or it's what it's called is COVID 19. COVID 19 is its shorthand name, its technical name, and so this Thai Tales of 2020 is being postponed due to that particular outbreak situation. It is probably the first furry convention to be postponed due to adverse events that I'm aware of. So it certainly is a historical situation that is impacting furry conventions and furry things. That would be in Thailand, and that would be Bangkok. In the United States and in Canada, we have particular furry conventions that are coming around the corner. This weekend is Furthermore, and in the end of March, we will be having Furry Equinox. The latter of the two, Furry Equinox. So for Furthermore, there has not been any reported coronavirus cases in the Washington, D.C. area or in the Crystal City area, more specifically, which is where the Pentagon is and things like that. So there's no reports of any of those kind of outbreaks in those areas, though furry conventions usually draw in crowds from, a sizable chunk of areas. Furthermore, is not a major convention, so it'll probably draw in a lot of locals from like the Delaware and Maryland and Virginia areas. It may bring in some people from other places, but it's not like an Anthrocon or a Midwest Fur Fest in that regard. But it's always good to have a side of caution. We'll go over that in a bit. But Furry Equinox is one in Canada that'll be happening at the later part of this thing. They, due to some prodding from some concerned attendees, um, basically made a news article talking about what their convention is doing in response to the coronavirus issue and what they are deciding to do or how you can better handle those particular situations. At this time, neither Furthermore nor Furry Equinox have postponed or decided things. Furthermore is going to be this very weekend, and Furry Equinox is going to be at the end of March currently. Um, Always be aware to keep in details if there's anything changes about that. I think there was like maybe one or two cases that were stated that were in Toronto. I'm not quite sure. But obviously, I think Toronto and I think Canada might have a one up on the US when it comes to healthcare services. But at the end of the day, um, like that subjective thing aside, I think that this situation is sort of a adverse opportunity. And when I say adverse opportunity, what I mean by that is a lot of times we take for granted when things are healthy, we take for granted when things are going well, and when things like this come up, they kind of blindside us. For sure, when things started coming down on Monday, like when it started to actually impact the markets and things like that, a lot of people were caught off guard and saw a lot of things just like wiped. Like a lot of people saw some of their wealth that they had built up over years and years, mostly for the middle class, had built up over years and years, kind of wiped out. Um, and for those who are not in the middle class and don't have their money in the markets, what that means is that the people up there just got a little closer to you, right? It's called a correction. Okay, these things happen, and they're very well infamously known. And the markets have been doing a correction for the past for the last week. They were making their corrections. This week, it's kind of like doing this weird little like ripple thing where it's like it's trying to recover, it can't quite recover, and it's trying to recover. So people are kind of like the tug of war is happening, where it's like the whole market went bang, and then they hit the ground, and then like they did like a big old belly flop, and then the water's kind of like trying to you know come back up. Like it's trying to make it thing bounce like a trampoline, right? Like it hits the ground, it's trying to bounce back up, but it's like it's having resistance when doing so. It's gravity, you know. So, and of course, like I can go on a whole rant about that, but I won't. There's like people will say, "Oh, the markets went up by 1,000 points." It's like it's because Biden won Super Tuesday, and it's like no, it's because we just had a historical drop in the market, and they're trying to recover. So there's these big ups and downs, and the market is volatile. Nobody. It has nothing to do with Bernie Sanders. It has nothing to do with Biden. It has nothing to do with Trump. And it's always interesting to see, like, it's just something that happens. Like even in individual stocks, when an individual stock does this huge plummet thing, isolated from the entirety of the market, this same thing happens. Basically, a stock will go like this, like one stock, one ticker will go like this, and then it will like do this little ripple effect, and then eventually like rebound, right? So one bad news comes out, people get shocked and react, and they pull their money out, and then people are like, well, I don't think that the news is actually that bad, and then they'll start to recover a bit. Um, it's just normal. It's just a thing that happens, and it's always. And the funny thing with me learning about all that stuff, it actually helps me assess when people are BSing me in news a little bit better, because it's like I've seen BS in news a long time, and understanding how isolated people throwing money into the markets are from like the rest of the world because they are isolated. Um, People trying to give reasons like the market's reacting rationally, and this is why it's reacting that way. Just kind of like you're like they don't know. They don't know why it's doing what it's doing. They're just pretending that they do. But anyways, enough about that thing. I've been kind of nerding out about that kind of stuff recently, as you can probably tell when you're going on my Twitter feed. Um, but this is about coronavirus, but that has its impact on the markets. And you could see kind of the panic in people because it was a historic slide. It was like probably one of the it was I think for that week it was like considered one of the top 5 slides of losses in a week. So it is a historic event, and it will go down as a historic event. Um, but let's get into the statistics. It's like, are these fears founded, and why? Um, should people consider not going to conventions? Will it have an impact on attendance? That's actually a good question because, like, when I do my little like predictions of attendance counts over the years, I don't factor in enforce what's they call enforce madara or whatever it's called, like acts of God. I don't consider that into my equations. Like it's just like, okay, if everything just stays normal, like this is how much these things are going to change. Will it have an impact on the ability for people to um, be charitable? Because the guys who were charitable at the end of the year might have been, man, this is a great year in stonks. I had a great time in the stock market. I had so much gains. I have so much income. I'm just gonna throw like $100,000 at this donation thing in MFF at the end of the year. They might not have the money to do that this year, right? If the stock market doesn't recover from these like 2018 prices, because that's basically where we're at right now. Is that the stock slid down and basically wiped the entire year of 2019 off the map, and like gone. We're back at 2018. Let's do the time warp again. But as they said, stocks tend to rebound a little bit. I don't know if they'll do a full recovery, a partial recovery. That's speculation, and I don't do that. And that's not what this channel is for. This channel is about this facts right here. So here we have coronavirus. This is from Business Insider, and I'll put a link in the description below for the article that this comes from, where they talk about it. This is the mortality rate of the different types of diseases, which I sort of made reference to earlier. As you can see, coronavirus here, even though it's already introduced in 2020, it's already caught on a lot more to people than the other ones have. This one has the mortality rate at about a 3.4. Whereas you can see it is the least mortality rate of all these viruses on here. But these are some big whoppas up here. It's more deadly than the flu, though. And the difference is that for the flu we have a vaccine, or we have an attempt at a vaccine, whereas like this we don't have a vaccine yet, and we probably won't for a year and a half to 2 years. It's being developed right now, and those are being developed. So if you are want to be do cautious, it's always good to wait for the vaccine. Um, so as you can see, the mortality rate is 3.4%, which is catching something with a 3.4% is still nothing to sneeze at, right? But you have to also understand, this is from that very same article, is that you also have, it also is very proportional on age. It's not equally, that 3.4% is not equally distributed amongst age groups. It is very much impactful of people who are older in age um, than people who are younger in age. For as you can see here, anyone up to the age of 40, I think it's 40. I can't read with these glasses on, which is ironic, yes. So anyone up to the age of 40 has a point, basically has it's like, it seems like it's a 0.2%, right? And then when you're up to age 40, that's when it doubles a little bit. And then when you get up to over 50 or older, that's when it starts to become a sizable chunk. And particularly for people who are really elderly, with people who are in the silver, in the centrum silver years, getting to that 14.9%. And also, if you are elderly, have immunocompromised, if your immunity is compromised in any way, or if you are pregnant, those are factors that are basically warned to be updo and most cautious, right? Um, Obviously, people who are elderly, who are immunocompromised, and are pregnant are usually have to be cautious about things anyway. They are well aware of that. Um, but they just have to be even more cautious than ever. However, I must add a very big emphasis here. Just because people like ourselves and people like, you know, have a very low chance of dying from this thing doesn't mean that we should be walking about willy nilly and being uncautious whatsoever to the concerns of catching this and spreading it around, because that's the biggest concern, is spreading it around to people who could suffer more than us as individuals, or us catching it and then spreading it to somebody else who will spread it to somebody else who will spread it to somebody who will have a harder time dealing with it. So if you are showing symptoms of this, which is fever, coughing, and things like that, it's there are a few symptoms. Unfortunately, they're pretty common symptoms. So you know, there's supposed to be testing. Unfortunately, right now it sounds like testing is having a big issue right now. But if you are feeling under the weather, the best thing you could do is stay isolated, stay home, and not go to a convention if you're feeling under the weather. Um, and if you have gone to a convention or a gathering space, take some time between gatherings, slow down a little bit instead of jumping from convention to convention. As I saw, one of you was like going, "Oh, I might get flight deals. Oh, I'm gonna jump to all these conventions." It's like, and they're young, so it's like, okay, well, they're young. They wouldn't probably die if they caught this thing, but slow down a little bit, allow time for, your body to germinate and see if you have any, con crud that you wouldn't want to spread to anything else. And if you get the con crud, please, 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 please stay home. And the reason I say to like kind of stymie or jumping from furry convention to furry convention so quickly is because coronavirus can pass pre-symptom. So if you catch it and you are contagious before you know you're sick. And so taking some time between gatherings to allow the sickness to germinate so that you know whether or not you're sick can help prevent the pathogen from going there. And there are people who have other, like, even if you are young and even if you are healthy, there are individuals out there who I know and some of them are friends of mine, who, in the face of something like this, will freak out. They have anxiety, like they have other things other than the physical capacity. The emotional capacity is not there either. And if they were to be in a situation where things are under quarantine and things are under that, they would freak out, right? So they want to avoid any kind of circumstance where social sort of things become in locking, right? So where things are like, I don't want to have to quarantine myself. I don't want to have to deal with, feeling trapped, right? And then anxiety with it. And if that person's watching, they might know who they are, who I'm referencing, so I won't name names. But that is a legitimate concern as well. For someone like me, that's not too much of a concern because I typically live in isolation anyway. Um, so I don't like if I were to get sick with something like this, I would basically learn how to deal with that. And I would try to stay home. I wouldn't go to work and try to pass it on to my coworkers. I would try to invest in a home office because most of the stuff I do is on computer anyway. I would try to take that time to invest in a home office where I could more comfortably work from home and be efficient at home, even when working under the weather, but not risking passing it off to others. Um, I would use it as an opportunity, as some of the Eastern countries have been, to try to remote work, do more remote working kind of aspects. Um, and and probably for at least 2 weeks, like have Amazon deliver my food to me, live on like rations and things like that, not go out and spread the disease. I would stand here, I would make my house a thunderdome where two things enter and one thing's going to leave, and it's going to be me because the virus is not going to leave by itself. And if I die in my house, then it's not coming with me. So that's very morbid. But what I'm saying is that you know, quarantines are important. And speaking of markets, there was this one guy on Twitter who's like, "Oh, the mortality rate is going to be the same thing. We should just infect everybody and just get it over with so we can get back to our stonks and get back to the stock market." And I'm like, man, you are one crazy. This is what it's like. Anyone who thinks that the market is perfect has to, like, there's this argument whether the markets are perfectly balanced or whether they're imperfect. You got to remember there's guys like that, right, saying that kind of garbage. And he's like, it's like, no, no, no. See, that's the quarantine is to lower the number of infected people. See, the mortality rate is the same whether it's one person infected or 100 people infected. But if something has a mortality rate of 2% and one person gets infected, then the odds are no one's going to die, right? If that one person gets infected and they stay isolated from everyone else and fight that disease by themselves, isolating themselves from everyone else, in that perfect situation, no one dies. But if 100 people get infected and it has a 2% mortality rate, then two people, even if all 100 people remain isolated from that point, are going to die. The idea of a quarantine is not to ruin the stock market or to do any of that. The reason for the quarantine is to lower the number of people dying, not the percentage, right? It's sort of like how low volume stocks can go up and down in value, even though there's not a lot of people voting for it. But the volume of trading has an impact on the stocks and has a more of a signal that there's an actual crowd direction going in that way. The concept here is to lower the volume, okay? I'm trying to talk in language that you understand, Mr. Crazy Man on the television, okay? And if you think that volume has no impact on anything, just ask Robinhood, who just had their frickin' program bunk on them on Monday, and when everyone was like, stonks! Luckily for Robinhood, the stock market's going back down, and any corrections or trades that they would have made and thrown money at on Monday if they were investors would have probably just lost money anyway. So they could make that argument, but that's a whole other can of worms. We're talking about freaking diseases right now, not stocks. Crazy man. Like, I'll put a link in the description for that one. That one's going around the internet because that guy's just going unhinged, man. Don't let anyone tell you that the stock market's perfect. You got people like that trading on it, then obviously it's not. So, um, and I think that some of the fears of this sometimes can come from ignorance, such as the ignorance I discussed there. One game that I recall was Plague Inc. And the one thing I recall about Plague Inc. is that in the early game, it's kind of quaint when you look at it, when you look back at it right now. Because when you look back at it, like we know coronavirus, Corona 19, exists, and we know it pretty early, even though like the symptoms are rather mild. And the mortality rate's not that great. Uh, in this game, the idea is that you are the pathogen and you're trying to eliminate humanity. And in the game, like you do mutations, and those mutations, like you implement it, and the way that it does it is it's like anyone who's currently infected with it will have the mutations impact them, which is not how viruses work. So I think that a lot of people look at this coronavirus and start panicking a little bit because it's sort of starting off like this Plague Incorporated sort of perfect storm, where you have, this very catchy thing that's not very lethal. And people are like, well, what if it becomes something really lethal? It's like, well, it could, I don't know about mutations on this. I'm not a scientist. I don't know how malleable coronaviruses or this corona novel will be. Um, at the worst, it'll be like the flu, or a more dangerous version of the flu that will have to require vaccinators to kind of try and get their head around it every year. Hopefully, it's not a very mutated strand, and we can make one vaccine and be done with it and kill it off like smallpox or something. Um, but if mutations do happen, it's not like in the game of that game where you make the mutation and all of a sudden all the people who are infected, and by the way, people who are infected eventually get better and they have an immunity to it at that point. Um, it's not like they have it in their system forever and it follows them to the end of days. Your immune system fights it off. Okay. Um, which is why if someone like me were to get it, the best thing I could do is stay home, fight it off, and be isolated, and then after that, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I've been infected. I got the old-fashioned vaccine, right? You get the ye old-fashioned vaccine where your body fights off the disease, the infection, and it succeeds, and you have the antibodies for it, so that the next time you get infected, it's going to be less severe if anything happens at all. But obviously, the best thing to do is for most people is going to be to wait for that vaccine in the coming year or two, and then take the vaccine so that way they don't have to be on their arse for 2 weeks as their body fights its el natural, right? In a more hostile environment with a live virus. Um, so the way that you deal with these things is very, very not sexy. Okay, it's not like, oh, eat silver or do any of this fancy stuff, or if I rub my belly and pat my head at the same time, it'll no, you don't want to do that. Actually, that's actually the worst thing you could do. Keep your hands away from your face and your mask, unless you're wearing a furry suit head. Then you can put your hands on your face all you want, which is awesome, right? Um, if you're a human and you're coughing, put your in your elbow, okay? If you're greeting people at a furry convention, this is going to be hard for furries, I know. Maybe avoid the hugs so much. Maybe like bump elbows, man. Yeah. Or there was one going around the internet space, which was, using your feet, kicking things with your feet, like doing like foot bumps, which was awesome. There was a Twitter one where it was showing people in the eastern areas, um, in the eastern countries, and they were showing like some guy is like, oh, reaching out to hug. Like, no, 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 no. Let's do this, and they like bump their feet, and I'm like, kangaroo approved. Yes, let's. Why haven't we done that in the first place, man? This is like this is taking making lemons out of lemonade or lemonade out of lemons. It's like, yeah, like why don't we just do feet bumps? Like let's do that. You know, that's a kangaroo approved like thing. It's like, yeah, man, yeah. Let's give ourselves a little kick, a little tap with our foots. Yeah, instead of like, or you do elbow bumps or like, don't do like fist bumps or like handshakes or any of that. Don't stick your hand in other people's mouths. Gonna go and stick your tongue between their fingers. Any of your weird customs that inquire your hands with the faces and the hands with the body and the hands with the touching of the epidermis. Yeah, keep your grubby paws to your maw, away from your maws. Okay, and wash your hands. It is highly recommended that you wash your hands. A lot of people were buying masks, and that was also not recommended by the CDC because it's like the masks are supposed to be one-time usage, and they're supposed to be properly fitted, and they're supposed to be like there's a lot of things that in order to get them to work properly, you have to know what you're doing, and if you're not using them properly, they can actually be more hazardous because you're fidgeting with your mask, right, and all that kind of thing. Now, the people who are investing in APT, thank you for that. Which, by the way, APT during this whole coronavirus thing, it went from less than $5 a stock to about 17. So and then there was another one that went from there's a lot of penny stocks that are going up into the $5, $20, $10 ranges. It's mostly rich people panicking about man, just get us more stuff so that we can fight this disease, man. I don't want to die of illness. I'm too rich to die. You know, I joke about that, but it's like, dude, this isn't some Forex game where it's like, hey, your city is building this thing and it's going to take 4 turns, and it's like, throw money at it. Oh, okay, you threw money at it. Now it's going to build next turn. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. The vaccine is still going to take 1.5 years, no matter how much money you're throwing at these pharmaceutical companies. Maybe what you should have done was throw money at these pharmaceutical companies before there was an issue so that they could have proper items and training and things in preparation for a situation like this. So they're not starting from ground zero and working their way up. And instead, we're able to train themselves and get themselves ready for this situation. Maybe that's how it should have been done in the first place. But what do I know? I'm just a kangaroo, okay? I don't know stocks. I don't know market trends and profitabilities and all this crap. All I'm seeing is the imperfections of the market coming home to roost this week. And looking at the different changes in behavior that these past few weeks have gone, and finding some sort of odd, people are like the invisible hand of the market. It's like, no, they're acting like irrational human beings just as they normally do. I don't see what's so invisible hand about that. Anyways, what do I know? This is going off topic again. Why do I keep bringing it back to stonks? Careful. Those things are dangerous. They'll take over your life. Anyways, washing your hands, most important thing. Not investing in stonks that rich people are panic buying. So here's there was a little thing going around, doing the happy birthday song, washing the hands, because these coronaviruses apparently are very vulnerable to hand washing, just regular, plain old, unsexy hand washing. If you don't have soap and water nearby, apparently alcohol-based sanitizers also work. But rubbing thoroughly between those paw fingers and all that stuff, doing that unsexy thing. And yes, washing your hands, men, might be unsexy, but you know what is also unsexy? Coughing up a lung. Being bedridden's unsexy, especially since no one's going to want to get in bed with you if you're bedridden in that way. All right, that's very unsexy. No one want to touch that. So do the unsexy thing that's a little less unsexy and wash your hands, okay? And I even put up a little. Everyone was making these little memes about like what songs that they would sing during the thing, like to make sure that they're washing their hands long enough. And I kind of went overboard with the parody of My Sharona. Die Corona. Ooh, my little nasty germ. I'm not gonna let you give you my time, Corona. Oh, you make my nose run. Gonna get you off of my mind, Corona. Never gonna stop. Give it off. Wash my dirty hands. Always gonna scrub till you undermine. I. Yeah, I spent too much time on that one. But hey, that's how long you should be washing your hands. Get off of my paws, Corona. All right, so here's the thing about the news that we have to understand, and this is what I'll conclude with. This was obviously a longer one because it's a lot of information. There's a lot of misinformation about it. There's a lot of panic out there. I can only work off the information that I have, and I can only work on the information that I believe is well centered and has good things on it. Any sources that I tried to use had some backup somewhere with some numbers from something. Numbers will be fickle though. When we're talking about mortality rates, the mortality rates came from a study. Um, Interestingly enough, like when I'm reading certain rates in the United States, when it's at its earlier stages here, there was one business magazine that was talking about interest rates and the changes of the interest rates. Which, by the way, once again, it's like low, like the markets are in panic mode because they don't have faith that this coronavirus thing is going away. You know what would help in times like this? Lowering the interest rates. For who would that help? Like people who own houses are gonna just like, oh, let me refinance my mortgage. That's going to help. Oh, that's the greatest cure for corona is refinancing my house. That's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? It's like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, are people mad? Are people crazy? It just drives me nuts. But anyways, I was reading an article about the lowering of the interest rate, and like it was saying, oh, there's 130 cases reported by the end of Wednesday, March 4th, and there were 11 deaths at that time in the United States. And my mind was like, that's 6%. That's not 3.4% that we saw earlier. And we have to think about, like, okay, why would that be inflated? Is it something else? Is there an environmental factor? And then you have to go, well, in the United States, people tend not to seek medical help unless they are really, really sick. And it's somewhat cultural, but it's also somewhat because of the way our medical system is set up, where it's like insurance companies are very loath to give up their money. So unless you are freaking your legs are falling off, and even in those circumstances, they will probably deny your claims and cause you to pay a lot of money to see your doctor, right? Without you fighting them physically and getting a lawyer involved. Like that, like there is a notorious infamy about the American health institution, and it is a reality. And it is one that causes it so that people with only severe or like um basically very like severe sort of symptoms would go to the thing. So really the people with severe symptoms are the only ones getting recorded, where in other countries people who may not have such severe symptoms might go to a doctor and get tested and find out that they have it. And since those people who have less severe symptoms are getting reported, it lowers the mortality rate, right? Um, and people try to use that as an excuse. But the reality is that if our system and our way and our culture influences an artificial raising of mortality rate statistics, maybe we ought to change the way we deal with things. Maybe we ought to think about revising the way it does, because that's going to harm the economy too. is artificially inflated mortality rates because we're too afraid to seek out medical attention because of situations where we're afraid that we're going to become indentured servants for our entire lives because we had to go see a doctor, right? Maybe those things have an influence on the economy. But what do I know? I'm not a financial CVA. This is for entertainment purposes only. So, what do I know? But what I'm saying is maybe there are things that we can do better because if the stock market continues to kind of tumble down the stairs like tumbles the stair dragon, maybe there's something that is a bit viral about the way our system works, that where viruses and bacteria have this sort of undue influence over it. Because here's the thing, like, a lot of people have this conspiracy crap in the back of their mind where it's like, oh, it's some foreign agent trying to put this in here. It's like, no, everyone's dealing with this crap right now. Okay. But if it's having such a negative impact on our country, maybe, just maybe, we should look into making sure that we are well prepared for making sure that we have the medical things and the systems in place where people feel comfortable using the medical institutions in order to investigate a proper fiscal and moral and social defense to possible sort of manipulation via viruses, right? We are too susceptible to social engineering. We are too susceptible to physical ailments of biological situations. And I think that this is, as more as kind of scary as it is an opportunity for our government to put their money where their mouth is, to have our free capitalist society put their money where their mouth is and see if they can figure out a solution to this problem, because it is a problem that needs a solution. And it should have had a solution in place. And there are some people who've trained their entire lives for this, and I have faith in them. And we're going to see, and this is the opportunity to see whether or not we have what it takes. And as things go on, um, whether what your decisions are when it comes to going to furry conventions or going to other things, that is up to you. If you are too anxious, if you're too scared, or if you know that you are immunocompromised or elderly and that you are very susceptible to mortality from these kind of events, staying away from conventions, and that's what you want to do. I will not berate you for that. That is your decision to make. I presented what I had here, and it is up for you to make the decisions of what you want to do with that information. Me personally, I know that my immune system is very, very good. I rarely get sick, and if I do, it's usually the wappas. If I get sick, I'm sick. Like I usually don't have like little head sniffles or anything like that. I'm recovering from a major one that I had starting last Sunday, but I'm good to go at this point. Like what it was, I don't know. I think it was just a major bronchitis or something. Because it had like that mucusy stuff, that yuck, the yuck, you know. So but when you do that, I make sure I wash my hands. Make sure when I blow my nose, it's all clean. I will be putting disinfectant into this half mask here, spraying it on a little bit. Also, that's a good point. Don't share head masks. I know I read through my Twitter space and I saw Ash Coyote was putting up tweets about her feeling really sick over the past few days. And then as I went through my time feed, I saw, well, I was wearing Ash Coyote's mask. And I'm like, is one thing correlated with the other? Probably not. But don't share your head. Don't share your fursuit head during this time. If someone says, "Can I wear your fursuit head?" Say, like at this point right now, I say, "Not while this coronavirus thing is happening," because I want to make sure that if people are having the crud, I don't want to start sharing germs around right now. Don't be OCD, right? That'll be my personal thing. Like, people rarely ask to wear this head, but if it is a thing amongst your social group, try to avoid doing that um, during these times, because you don't want to spread the germs around. Because either like Ash Coyote might not have had symptoms, they shared that head with that person. If they were sick first, she could have spread it to someone else, or if she was sharing her head around, somebody else could have been sick and gave it to her. So that just reminded me of that. So just be aware. Um, just be responsible. Use greet each other with elbow slaps and foot slaps and like hip bumps and like bouncy things. Hug if you want, but just try to avoid like the face to face thing and like the hands. Avoid the face with the hands and like um, just like um, you know, avoid face to faces stuff if you don't like no. Just like try to keep some distance. But don't be afraid to live life too. If you know you're young and you know that you're ready to rear and to go, I won't stop you. But also take the time to slow down. Um, do whatever you want with this advice. It's up to you. And it's up to you to provide what future you want for yourself. And that's sort of the thing. I did my spiel. You do what you want to do. So that's it for today. What do you think your activities will be with the coronavirus? Kick a comment in the comment section. If you like this kind of comment, uh, if you like this kind of content, be sure to kick that like, kick the subscribe button and the bell to get notifications, and kick a comment in the comment section discussing what your feelings about the coronavirus will be. Be as speculatory as you want, and I might speculate back. I don't know, but the facts are the facts. Thankfully, this is not like the Black Death or the Spanish flu kind of epidemic, but it certainly is a little bit of a whopper and can certainly wreak havoc on our elderly populations and immunocompromised populations. And it certainly will be a great, in a sadistically kind of way, a great trial run for our ability as a species to get our science people out in the front lines to combat these viruses, to see how fast we could take down a new strain such as this, and try to mitigate its ability to spread amongst the population. Um, to treat it sort of like as if it might be like treat it like it would be the future, next big disease that could be wreak havoc on our citizens and our denizens, and to see if we can prevent as many people from getting infected as possible, because the next time it might not be a mortality rate, a sort of unevenly distributed curve of mortality like this. It might be a lot more worse. So it's just to be prepared and prepare ourselves and to prepare our systems for it. And don't just stop investing in these kind of stocks of disease prevention just because they're not profitable most of the time. Stonks, stock markets, don't just throw money at the last minute. Be invested in humanity's future of fighting viruses more than just when it's all over the news. Okay, please. Please, I don't want people to day trade you against you and like go, well, I'm just going to buy these viral stocks and wait for rich people to throw their money at it just so I could sell the stock later to more rich people who are just panic buying. I don't want that to happen to you, so just invest a little earlier next time, okay? What do I know? I'm just a kangaroo. Anyways, my rambling is over. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys next time. I will be at Furthermore. I will be, traveling out. I have somebody who I'm meeting up with, and it'll be great. I'm kind of one of those people, as I said. I'm feeling fine, um, and like I will be cautious and all that. Um, and yeah, but if I do feel ill from it, I will certainly like cancel any future plans and meets that I would have to fight off any kind of infections that I would get. But I'm in that kind of age category where, if I did catch it, then I would be, you know, getting ye old fashioned sort of treatment of having my body fight it off, building up immunity to it in that sort of way. I obviously the goal would be not to catch it though, because obviously if you catch it, it has chances of spreading, and it forced me to be isolated for weeks on end, and then my employer probably wouldn't like that. So just things to do that, but that's just my plans. Your plans could be different, and um, I do not look down upon people who are more cautious, and because there will be future events, and it's sometimes not worth it. And that's the decision that a lot of people need to make: live free or die, or you know, live or live, and allow yourself opportunities in the future. Those are decisions that people need to make, and hopefully we have the ability to keep making those decisions, and things don't get so bad that those decisions are made for us. Because if things get that bad, then fun times. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.